Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. This is at 7 o'clock in the afternoon here in Florida, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4 o'clock in the afternoon in California.
That is correct.
We have here as a special invitee, Adrian F. Malagon, chairman of the Libertarian Party of California. And the reason why we brought him here was because of the fact that there's a need for diverse opinions. I once said that diversity without diversity of opinions is dictatorship. And I'm going to be frank with you. Being a Cuban of blood and having lived in Venezuela, I'm not liking what I'm seeing. But I want to turn the floor over to Adrian. Adrian, for me, it's a pleasure and honor having you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
My biggest question and subject matters, because you're going to know more about this than myself. I just simply vote Libertarian. What is the state of the union right now as we're sitting down and talking, including the state of California?
Okay, so I see those as kind of similar questions, but they are a bit different. So the State of the Union is, in my view, I'm an anarchist, but I am, as you mentioned, chair of the Libertarian Party of California, but my philosophy is anarchist. I see everything in decline. The empire, which is these United States, it's on its last leg, as I see it, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I think this starts sparking conversations like national divorce and us not being able. I mean, you see everything on social media and everything happening within the political sphere, and people can't stand each other anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. California, for instance, is different than Florida. Florida is different than Alabama. Alabama is different than New York. Unfortunately, California and New York are a little bit too similar, but that's fine. We can't have people just dictating their way of life and their philosophy and what they view to be ethical or moral on other people. And people are starting to kind of realize that, for better or for worse. And I see that as a good thing. Here in California, I mean, everyone associates California with being this blue state that is unsalvageable and unmanageable. And there's a part to that. There's a part to that that's true. So it is primarily blue in the areas that matter most. So Southern California, for instance, LA specifically, and then here in the Bay Area where I am, San Francisco. So those are the ones kind of leading the charge. But everyone forgets about the coastal region. People forget about what we call the state of Jefferson, which is further north in California, pretty much anything from Sacramento up to the border of Oregon, and then the Central Valley, which is a huge part and the agricultural powerhouse of California, where you have a lot of conservatives. I wouldn't say necessarily libertarians, but a lot of conservatives and perhaps liberty-leaning Republicans that hold down the fort there for a lot of different things. And then you have in more affluent areas, it's more diverse than people think. So I live in Contra Costa County specifically, where I'm also chair of the Libertarian Party here. And it's the only truly purple county in the Bay Area. And it's because there's a lot of affluence here and then not so much affluence. So we're next door to Alameda County, which has Berkeley and has Oakland, and then San Francisco is its own city and county, and that's its own beast. But those are very, very blue, and there's no changing that. But Contra Costa has these little pockets that keep it grounded, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Same thing for Southern California. So Orange County is more purple. They kind of associate all of California as blue, but Orange County, again, is very affluent. And it's a place where people push back on taxes. They push back on some of these liberal agendas and policies that they know aren't going to work. I mean, they see what's happened in LA County, which is next door, and they're not having it. People in Contra Costa here usually have left. I mean, a lot of people have probably grown up and lived here for a long time, but a lot of people have also moved here from San Francisco, from the peninsula, which is what we call Silicon Valley. But that's also kind of a mixed bag in a little bit of in a different way. So California is more diverse than people give it credit for, but you can see the animosity, and it kind of came up more so during COVID than anything else. Well, I guess it started with the Trump election, or Trump's election, and that whole campaign carried on through 2020. COVID, just every situation seems to make it worse, and it seems to increase the divide, which I see as a positive thing, because again, people are starting to realize that this experiment of forcing people to live under some particular form of tyranny isn't working for them. And people are voting with their feet. I mean, I don't know. I haven't checked the numbers, but I know that a lot of people, a lot of my once fellow Californians have moved to your neck of the woods, right? They're in Florida now for a reason.
Bale.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just a lot. I've had a lot of friends move to Florida, other places in the South or on the East Coast because California became so uninhabitable during the COVID era, and it continues to this day. I don't know how much longer I'll be in California. I hope to fight for it as long as I can, but there may be a time where it just becomes unmanageable. But the way that I see things kind of unrolling now is that California is its own worst enemy, and it's going to implode. And I want to be here for that because then the Libertarian Party and other liberty-minded people can pick up the pieces. This isn't sustainable, and everyone kind of sees it. It's not a matter of if California will fall and implode. It's a matter of when. We're talking about, probably years. If I had to guess, probably somewhere within the realm of 5 years, we're going to kind of start figuring out what is going to happen by 2030 for sure.
So you're thinking about staying in California for now to see what you could contribute to California instead of moving to Florida or other states like many of your fellow Californians have done, like Scott Baio.
Yeah, that is the plan as of now. I mean, I was born and raised here in California. I was born and raised in the Central Valley, just south of Fresno. And so I always pictured myself being a lifelong Californian. There was no reason for me to leave. It has gotten progressively worse. Obviously, as you become an adult and you start realizing how taxes work and these policies start affecting your day-to-day life. I lost my career was on a great trajectory, and then I lost that career. I was part of the first round of tech layoffs when COVID, the government's response to COVID happened in early 2020. So I was fortunate enough to go down California, as I'm sure you've heard and probably didn't experience because you were in the free state of Florida. It became uninhabitable for a long time, and there was nothing to do. There was a time where I almost got arrested for going to the beach in Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz is about 45 minutes away. It was a ghost town, and I wanted to just go. I just needed to be outside because I was going absolutely mad. And the minute that I stepped on the beach, some park ranger came and threatened me and that whole bit, even though the beach was empty. That's how bad it had gotten. And so I'd been following Tom Woods for a long time, who's also a resident of Florida. He was out here for a Speak Easy event in San Juan Capistrano specifically, which is Southern California. And he was doing a live podcast there. So I made sure that I took a trip down there. And just as something to do, I grabbed a friend and I said, hey, this has been kind of absurd. I need to get out of the house and we need to take a trip down there. So we went, speakeasy thing in a bar that he was able to set up. And Mark Skousen was there. Mark Skousen, for those of you that don't know, is the president. And I think he was the founder of Freedom Fest. And Freedom Fest is this festival with a lot of liberty-minded people, whether they be libertarian, anarchists, conservative, or right-wingers, whatever. And that's in Memphis this year in a few weeks, actually. He was there and he was giving a talk. And he said something. He has a house in Florida and he has a residence here in California. And he said, I don't spend as much time here in California anymore. And I'm not saying it verbatim, but this was kind of the spirit of the whole thing. And it was that it's really, I thought about selling my place here in California and being a permanent Florida resident. But then I thought to myself, I didn't ruin California. The people that ruined it should go. Why should I go? California is beautiful. It's so geographically diverse. It is arguably one of the most beautiful states for, a lot of reasons. You can go to the beach. That's just a couple of hours away. You can live here in the Bay Area and experience a different type of nice weather. Southern California is always 70-ish degrees, give or take, right? So we have a lot of mountain ranges. We have Yosemite. We have the sequoias, the redwoods. It's a beautiful place to live. And he said, why they ruined it? Why should I leave? And that was kind of a really interesting moment for me because I said, I want to fight. And that was kind of the beginning of my involvement in the Libertarian Party, because I want to, if we go down and this is truly unsalvageable, and even if everything were to burn to the ground and, we can't rebuild, I want to be able to say that I did what I could to fight for my home. This is my home. The people that ruined it don't get to dictate whether I have to leave. They should be the ones that are ashamed of what they've done to this beautiful state, and they should be the ones forced out, not me.
Yeah, what you just said just touched me right here, because what you said about California, and most of it is true. Not most of it, all of it. for what you've told me and for what other people I've known in California have told me. My next question is, when and if California and the Union implodes, as we're like probably living the last days of an empire, what can the Libertarian Party do? What can the freedom-loving people do, and even the anarchists do to not to salvage, but to create a new California or a new union?
Yeah, at that point, it's a matter of rebuilding, and it's one of the libertarian principles that everyone can get on board with, whether you're a political registered libertarian, whether you're a voluntarist, whether you're an anarchist. It's mutual cooperation, right? Mutual aid, and this and obviously like voluntary involvement with one another as to how we can better live. And it's showing it's going to be showing by example. That's going to be the best way that we can do it, is showing your way failed. And it didn't just fail, but it failed in such a miserable and terrible way for everybody that we can't go back to that. We have to look toward the future, and the future should be more liberty oriented. And I don't know what that's going to look like as far as, I mean, when I say that the whole thing is going to collapse, I really don't have an idea of what that will look like. Will the political infrastructure collapse? Will that mean that people will be more willing, that kind of system will still be in place, but people will still get voted into certain offices or whatever? I don't really know, but at the end of the day, I know that it's going to be more focused locally at the very least. That as the federal system continues to collapse and implode, it's going to be up to the states then to decide how they want to live. But in a state like California, the counties, particularly, what counties can contribute, and it contribute in what way, and help their citizens and focus on stuff locally, which is why, obviously the Libertarian Party as a whole is very big on decentralization and making sure that we run local candidates for office that can actually affect change. All the unsexy stuff that people don't talk about, like being on water boards and being on ag commissions and doing all this stuff at the local level, really affects everything else. So people forget, everyone always has their eye on the prize. Governor, senator, congressman, but there are other things that people forget about. And those are really the things that are the backbones of those individual communities. So, I mean, to answer your question, I think it's going to be to show people that, one, this failed. This system failed, and it was failing for a long time, and we've been able to come back for it before, but it's always getting progressively worse and worse, and progressive being the key word there, right? But we can do something different. Let's try something different. This is something that is not, we don't have to continue on this path of destruction. We have an opportunity to rebuild and be civil with one another. And if you don't like something that's going on, that's great. Move somewhere else, or we'll move somewhere else, and we'll decide to live amongst people that are like-minded. And it's just taking it to the next level of what's happening now. We just discussed a lot of Californians moving to Florida. People are starting to not necessarily vote at the polls anymore, but vote with their feet. They're done. They're tired. And that happens here in California too. If one county gets really unlivable, people have left San Francisco to come to the East Bay, for instance. People have left LA County to go to Orange County. Same thing for San Diego. People are always trying to find the best solution for them. And this is just taking it to, it's what I see as its natural conclusion, if that makes sense.
What is your message from California to the rest of the Union, to the rest of the United States, to the rest of the states that are of different cultures and different origins? What is your message to them?
I think my biggest message is, first of all, sorry for us being us. But in all seriousness, I do think that we're not all the same. California is incredibly diverse, and I don't mean that in some sort of leftist way. It's just the people that are in power. And we actually have a lot of talent here. We are a huge state, and a lot of us do not agree with the powers that be. And we really want to lead the way, whether it be, at least I'm speaking for liberty-minded people in California, we want to lead the way as far as setting an example for the rest of the country, and whether that means eventual secession. A couple of times this has been thrown as an idea for different counties. San Bernardino tried to throw that on the ballot. I think it was last election cycle. The state of Jefferson that I mentioned earlier, that adjoins to part of that is close to Idaho, right? So Oregon and then Idaho and that whole section. There's been talk about, there's a specific part of Oregon that's wanted to secede and become part of Idaho, which is really interesting. And the state of Jefferson has wanted to secede. from the state of California as a whole. I don't think that their position is that they want to be Oregon, but that they want to be their own thing. But this is something that's happening already, and it's California is often threatened. I remember there was a threat at the time of, well, if Trump gets elected, California is going to leave, and great, we can set the example for secession. Let's do that. Let's revisit that conversation. So I would encourage you guys to I would encourage the country to kind of allow us to implode and show us as a failed experiment, one that went terribly wrong, and then see what we can do here to rebuild and be a model for other people. Because for better or for worse, the old adage is true. As California goes, so does the rest of the country. Whether that's good or whether that's bad could be up to your political ideology. But at the end of the day, I think that does hold true because we are one of the biggest, most impactful states in the country.
For me, Adrian, it's a pleasure and an honor having you here. And it's also a pleasure and an honor for all of our public to listen to this great idea of libertarianism, and also especially from a libertarian anarchist like you, who's chairman of the Libertarian Party of California. I want to thank you for taking your time to come here and talk with us in the AG News Show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And in the future, we're going to be keeping in touch for future programs leading to the election. And I'm also inviting any other libertarians from California or other states in the union to please come and be interviewed in the AG News Show, because, as I say, diversity without diversity of thought is a dictatorship. That is my own saying, my own quote. And I'm authorizing you and the Libertarian Party of California and all over the country and all over the world. Please feel free to use it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And diversity is used so poorly these days that it's really nice to have a more substantial definition to it. The diversity of ideas is really important. Keeping conversation alive is how ideas flow and how we learn from each other. We can't learn from each other if we aren't willing to listen to each other.
And for those who speak Spanish, I also have the quote in Spanish. La diversidad sin diversidad de opinión es dictadura. And
Exactamente.
I leave it like that. For everybody from Florida to California in the AG News Show, this is Roberto Alvarez-Galloso, wishing you the best. Peace in, peace out, and peace everywhere. And remember, diversity without diversity of thought is dictatorship. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't leave yet.